Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Dill. I spend my Sunday morning in the lab, putting on my general manager hat for the Miami Hurricanes, looking at the transfer portal names that were in the portal, looking at the needs that Miami does have, and say, hey, who does Miami need to go out and get over the next couple of days and weeks? We got 6 names to talk about. We are going to go in order of names that I think are the most important targets for this Miami Hurricanes team. They'll fired up to get into it. These are, you know this because I be texting you all the time. Like these are my favorite conversations to have in the landscape of college football. Before we get into it, as always, to the Miami Hurricane fans, I know many of y'all have been dialed in. Would love to hear from you guys in terms of the names you want to go see. You want to see Miami go out and get over the next couple of days and weeks. And appreciate you guys. Whether we're talking spring ball, whether we're talking recruiting, whether we're talking the portal, the Miami Hurricane fans always show a ton of love to the boys. We appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Let it fly in the comments section. Without further ado, let's get into it. In a massive name popped over the last 24 hours that I think immediately, to me, becomes the biggest need for Miami. We weren't sure how many safeties, like starting caliber safeties, would be available in this spring transfer portal. To me, especially with Zaquan Patterson leaving, you need to add a safety just from a depth standpoint, but you're kind of looking for a starter next to Zachariah Poyser. You're not going to have a better opportunity to get a better safety than AJ Haulcy.
And Miami, and they don't have a ton of needs, like pressing needs, it feels like. Not like what maybe you saw last year. Like they really needed defensive tackles. Like it'd be nice to get a defensive tackle. I think it'd be nice to add a linebacker. But aside from that, you don't see those real pressing needs. The safety spot to me, that's when, like, yes, you like Zachariah Poyser, but aside from him, you don't really feel like you know that you have a starter.
Yeah, it's one of the only positions where, like, I don't know if we are even comfortable with the guy that we're going to start in 2025. Well, AJ Haulcy, like, makes you feel way more comfortable. And what I love about this kid is, one, he does everything you want in a safety. Go back to the 2024 year, 5 interceptions, like a ball hawking safety that knows how to get his hands on footballs, can operate in man coverage, especially with some of those bigger slot wide receivers, because this is a big dude. This is a big safety, 6 foot, 215 pounds. He's also similar to Zachariah Poyser, phenomenal at coming downhill, running that alley, and filling the run. 15 run stops last year. Does not miss a lot of tackles. Had 75 tackles from the safety position last year for Houston.
And makes him in space. That's the big thing. And
Yeah.
he's not tackling space at all. Like, yeah, it's nice that he can get into the box and make plays, but making open field tackles against good athletes, I felt like he was pretty consistent making that happen. And that was just, again, you go back to some of the issues last year, the inability to tackle in space was up there.
Yeah, there were a lot of problems. That was certainly one of them. And you can do anything you want with him. You look at over 700 snaps for Houston. That's always something I look at. Like, how much are you playing? Because if you're on the football field a lot, that tells me the coaching staff likes you a lot and feels like you're important. Over 700 snaps for Houston in 2024, 234 in the box, 100 as a nickel defender, 360 as a free safety. Put him anywhere you want. And he's a bigger body that, you said it best, like operates in space quite well. I was a little bit, and I'll be the first one to admit, I don't watch a ton of Houston football, so we have to kind of backtrack and look a little bit. The athleticism is where you want it to be for a bigger safety. That was a little bit of a concern that I had. This is a starting caliber player where you don't see a ton of names that are entering the spring portal window that are starting caliber for Miami. Also at probably the biggest position of need that Miami has. This has to be a massive target. Number 2, let's talk about him. David Stone. I feel like this makes a lot of sense. One, Mario Cristobal has routinely told us with his actions, not necessarily the media. He don't tell the media much, but has routinely told us with his actions that any chance that we get to get better along the line of scrimmage, we are going to take. Now, you look at Miami and say, we like David Blay. We like Justin Scott. I personally love Ahmad Moten. Like, I think you got 3 guys on the inside that can really be a force. The numbers are maybe a little bit of a question mark, especially with Josh Horton leaving. Like, is Artavius Jones ready to play the snaps we need him to play in 2025? Is Dante Simpson as a true freshman ready to play the snaps we need him in 2025? Well, David Stone, here's what fascinates me about David Stone is, one, he was like 5 inches away from committing to Miami during the first time around. You finished clearly second in this recruitment. I would argue maybe finished first, even though he went to Oklahoma. But they'll secondly, following Oklahoma spring practice, there might be some Miami fans who are skeptical saying, hey, he didn't play a ton for Oklahoma as a freshman. It sounds like this kid has taken a massive step. He's up to 315 pounds, has clearly matured as a person. I think this is one of those guys that there's a quiet year one, could really be a game wrecker in year two, and you have multiple years of eligibility. Like him and Justin Scott will be on this team in 2026. That will be an absolute force on the inside of that defensive line.
And he's even one that, like, the year one quietness, I don't think should be so surprising because it's hard to play really good football at the 290-pound range that it
Yeah, he's
felt
a little small.
like.
Yep.
You just
Yep.
look, he wasn't big enough, wasn't strong enough to be a really good player at the SEC level last year. Brian, you said it. Like when this type of guy gets in the portal, I think everybody's looking, and probably the added benefit for Miami is the SEC
Yeah.
can't really take their stab at him because the interconference
Yeah.
transfer rule, he'd have to sit a year. So I look, this is a year like, yeah, I'm sure Oregon's gonna be sniffing around. I'm sure Penn State and Ohio State are
Yeah.
both gonna be sniffing around. USC, I presume, will get in the mix. Most teams will, but you will avoid Texas, LSU, and a bunch
It's a unique opportunity where half your competition for this kid is eliminated from the SEC. And then secondly, like you have the strongest sitting relationship with this kid because of how hard you went after him out of high school. This modern era of college football, it's important to finish second in recruitments because you never know when they're going to come around again. And it has with David Stone less than 18 months since he committed to Oklahoma. I don't know if it's because you look at Miami and say like, all right, I'm probably looking a little bit more just from a depth standpoint. But you have the opportunity to add a potential, like it's certainly going to be a depth piece for Miami, but potentially could be a real difference maker for Miami. That's really hard to pass up. Number 3, Dill, and I'll give you the T-box here because I think you would have probably ranked him number 1. Harrison Taggart for BYU. Unique again situation. He committed to Mario Cristobal's staff at Oregon. Now he played under Dan Lanning, but committed to Mario Cristobal. No doubt Miami has some feelers out already for him. Certainly linebacker is a position of need. I know you like this kid a lot. How are we feeling about Harrison Taggart?
I probably would have him too. I'd flip him and David Stone mainly because of what you said. Like, I feel like Miami's in pretty good shape with their defensive tackle room. They have a lot of young, up and coming guys that you're excited about, and you just kind of throw David Stone into that mix a little bit. Aside from Wesley Bissain, I do think if you're a Miami fan, you probably wonder who's going to take that step. Like, is Aguirre, Pruitt, like one of those guys needs to start making some things happen and being a little more consistent than probably what you've seen in their limited reps so far in their career. In Blaine Taggart, I do think, or not Blaine, but Harrison Taggart gives you that ability to kind of smooth that transition out, I think, a little bit and set your floor way higher than what it, because again, that feels like a position where you probably almost want your number one guy. We haven't really seen Wesley Bissain in that number one linebacker role chair. Harrison Taggart, I just look, flies around the field, good at taking on blocks, good sense of where he's
played a
supposed
lot
to
of football. Like I think that's what you're
coverage.
saying. Like because look, I think Bobby Pruitt's going to be a good linebacker at some point. I think Kellen Wiley's going to be a good linebacker at some point. Are we positive it's going to be in 2025? I think the jury's still out on him. And Harrison Taggart really, I mean, I think was like that number one linebacker for BYU, and that was a pretty dang good BYU team. I think this one will make it's exactly what you're looking for. You're looking for an experienced linebacker that has played at a high level. Harrison Taggart might be the best available off-ball linebacker in the transfer portal right now, and that you have connections from him from your time in Eugene. If you're Mario Cristobal, makes a lot of sense. Number 4, and probably my favorite name in the portal, and I'll say this still. You could make the argument that Trebor Pena is number 1, and I would not argue with you. Here's the reason I have him at 4. Number 1, the amount of money that seems to be, commanding Trebor Pena's services seems to be very high. And look, I think he's a really good football player. If I did not hear all the good stuff I heard from JoJo Trader and Malachi Tony during spring, Trebor Pena would probably be number 1, and I wouldn't give a damn how much money he costs. So you got to go out and get him. With what I'm hearing from the young wide receivers, I don't think Miami has to come from a point of desperation. I think if you're Miami, you're selling them on, hey, you come to Miami, you're going to get targeted a lot. You're going to put up a ton of numbers similar to Xavier Sharp when you're going to go to the NFL. Now, is that sales pitch going to work with Jabor Pena? I certainly hope it does. I think a lot of Miami Hurricane fans certainly hope it does. He's at 4 though, because we've heard some good things from the young talent in the wide receiver room, but I do think you probably need to add at least one more veteran wide receiver, and Jabor Pena would be a great one to add.
Yeah, and again, just because you know how important Restrepo was to that team last year and how much they centered their offense, I feel like he does so many similar things. So that would be the
Oh yeah,
reason. And again, good players, like, yeah, they're valuable to college football teams. And like,
yeah,
okay, Fran Brown can say what he wants about not wanting to pay players like that. The game's the game. Like everyone
yeah.
knows that's part of it. And like again, he'll get his fair market value. I don't know that I'd be like totally shy away from the price tag. I'm not totally sure if what Fran Brown said about him was totally true.
Yeah,
You saw
that's true.
teammates tweet some things that he was a very much a stand-up player and a guy that they really respected. So
Oh yeah, I
that's
don't
all
think
like
you.
innuendo and hearsay about like the price tag and the complaining
Yeah,
about stuff.
I would harp that. Like, and I said, yeah, he's gonna come at an expense because, like what you said, he's a very good football player. I don't think this kid's coming in with a bunch of baggage, like you might see some other.
That's kind of what I don't get the sense it's like maybe like the Nico recruitment. Like that's a little bit of a different animal. Like
Yes,
I don't
no,
really have any reason to think Trevor Pena wouldn't come in and like again, he's gonna get paid. He's a good
he's a
player. Like sorry.
6 year senior that battled his butt off through multiple injuries at Syracuse, broke out in 2024, has one more year of eligibility. Like, I don't blame him for trying. And look at that Syracuse team; it ain't going to be that good this year, at least the way I'm looking at it. Blame this kid for trying to find a really good spot to kind of maximize who he is and what he can be in the NFL. One other wide receiver name that would probably come at a much less significant price tag that I do think would maybe make some sense is Keelan Marion. Um, Difference maker with the football in his hands, obviously, because what he does as a kick return. I mean, you're talking about an all-American kick returner for BYU, like a guy that can change the game in special teams, which is an added bonus, but also a guy that's played a lot of football and has done a lot of different things. Now, the thing with Keelan Marion is if Miami does want to add a wide receiver, I'd like to see them add a wide receiver that clearly is going to come in and play and be a significant contributor. What I heard from JoJo Trader and Malachi Tony and Dalen Upshaw and Joshua Moore, like I'll just say this quite frankly, I'm not positive that Keelan Marion comes in and immediately is like that guy in this Miami Hurricanes offense. So I'd probably lean Trebor Pena.
'Cause you
Not
have
a
your
bad option.
upside. That I kind of agree. You have your upside in the room. You have your like Keelan Marion's going to need to play different than he did at BYU to be a guy who impacts this Miami
Agreed.
team because he
Yeah.
just wasn't really much of a wide receiver. Really good kick returner, obviously, but
Yep.
didn't really produce at the wide receiver spot. So I'm kind of with you. This probably isn't the wide receiver I'm targeting. I'd be much more. And again, there aren't frankly a ton of wide receivers in the transfer portal, which might be why Tabor Pena is going to get what he gets potentially. Because I just look, there's not a ton of those
Yeah.
difference makers or guys who are super productive at big levels. But Keelan Marion probably wouldn't be the first guy I'd be looking at either if I'm Miami.
Murad Watson from Syracuse. Dylan, quite frankly, like same class as David Stone, just a better player right now. I think David Stone might be a better player in 2025, but from what we've seen, like Murad Watson, ain't nobody talking about him. Played over 500 snaps for Syracuse as a true freshman in the middle of that defensive line. Is an absolute hammer against the run. Now, the pass rush production wasn't totally there for him at Syracuse last year. I think that has a lot more to do with like the development that needs to take place. I turned on the film and said there's some pass rush upside, just hasn't really been unlocked yet. He's going to come out a pretty petty too, very similar to David Stone. But if you're looking for one more difference maker on the inside of the defensive line, the difference between David Stone and Murad Watson is Murad Watson has shown you that he can be a difference maker on the middle of that defensive line. If Mario Cristobal wants to go add one more name, there are some names that would make sense for Miami in that middle of that defensive line. Murad Watson being one of them.
Yeah, and my lean would still be to Stone just because the prior relationship, no
Yeah, agreed,
SEC
100%. I
competition
think
with
that's
that, certainly where I'd be looking. But you are right. I mean, Rod Watson, he is kind of the guy for me in the defensive tackle room. If you need day one immediate impact, that's
yep.
probably how I'd put it. Like David Stone, yeah, he's got an upside to him that might not be matched by Murad, or yeah,
Murad.
probably higher than Rod Watson, let's say. I don't think David Stone is like a shoe-in to be an immediate impact guy. Like we'll still again need to see more from him than what you saw as a
Yeah.
freshman. Murad Watson comes in. He's
And again, what I think uniques about David Stone and why I lean David Stone, one, you said the prior relationship. Number two, yeah, it seems like the heavy hitters are coming out for Murad Watson, specifically in the SEC. Like Texas, Georgia. I'm guessing LSU is going to come sniffing around. Ohio State's
Montana
already
State
been
is gonna
sniffing around.
beg.
Like I saw the four names that have emerged as early contenders for Murad Watson. I immediately thought he's going to come at a price.
You gotta love this kid because you're gonna have
Yeah,
to fight.
you're gonna have to pay him. Yeah, 100%. The Gregory Smith from Florida would make a lot of sense too. I think he's going to be a great football player. My only hesitation on Gregory Smith is I'm looking for a guy that I trust to come in and start. And I don't know if Gregory Smith's there. I think Gregory Smith's going to be a really good football player during his time wherever he goes. I'm not sure if it's going to be in 2025. And I think Miami cannot afford to go out and get a guy that you don't know if he can contribute in a meaningful way immediately. That's why I lean AJ Haulcy. We'll see. Hey, look, it's been very clear. Mario Cristobal is going to look to make some moves. What moves are those going to be? And we'll find out in the next couple of days. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Though, here's the question I'll leave the listeners with. You know, if you're checking this out, you follow the portal pretty damn closely. What's your dream class? Like, who do you want to see Miami get the most? Put the list down in the comment section. Most wanted towards least wanted. We'll chop it up down there. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.